Good morning, Lagos. Thank you very much for staying tuned. It's time for Freshly Pressed 981 here on Smooth Breakfast. I'm
Yes.
Ayo Mairo Ese,
I'm Valentine Ohu.
and we have with us in the studio Mr. Cheta, good morning.
Good morning. How
Uh,
was your night?
I don't know if I should answer that question, but yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
I was told that it's a very rude question that
So, why did you
Nigerians
ask
ask.
again
Eh?
this morning?
I'm Nigerian.
All right, we also have Justin with us
Oh,
in the
wow.
studio. Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Morning, Justin. You
My
can
night was dark.
And full of terror.
You can find Justin at Justin Ijeh on Twitter. You can find us collectively at Smooth 981 FM.
On Twitter at Smooth981FM with the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. When you add that hashtag to your messages, we can see them and read them out. You can also send messages through WhatsApp to 0809 That's for your messages. We're streaming live on YouTube. You can also use that to send in a message as you watch us go through the stories.
And on the app, someone asked earlier on, you can search for us on your Apple Store, Google Play Store, App Store, Google Play Store. Search for Smooth 981, Smooth 98.1 FM Lagos. Our
That's right.
logo is there, so you can't miss it. Please download and follow. Take us wherever you go.
So, our president has said we shouldn't call him Baba Go Slow, and it's a story from the Punch newspaper. I'll start with you, Justin, for your analysis on this one. The president, Muhammadu Buhari, says those who describe him as Baba Go Slow during his first administration will be in shock during his second term. Can you take us through the story and tell us why he made this statement? And to
Okay,
who?
so first of all, don't misquote Mr. President. He didn't say we should not call him Baba Goslo. He said those who call him Baba Goslo are
Well.
in for a shock.
So what did he say? Call him Babako slower.
Well, he says you will see whether I am slow or fast
Let's watch.
by the time he's done.
Mhm.
Let me quote. It means I will persuade the police and the judiciary to be hard. And where I uncover that they are not hard, I will find out who is responsible for the slowness in terms of command from the DPO upwards. Heads up, people. Baba is going John Wick on all of you.
For the second time, John Wick 2 this time.
Yeah.
They
So
just wanted to use that, Abby.
Yeah.
well, I have to plug it. But here's the thing: to take this a bit more seriously, it's all well and good to promise better. Let me use this very typical phrase: dividends of democracy in this phase of his administration. But I think we need to depart also from military speak. This is a democracy. You do not come out threatening fire and brimstone in any guise.
Would you call it threats? Because, I mean, nicknames are coined
After
from...
saying I'm going to go slow or
nicknames-
fast, the next statement is about police.
Nicknames are coined from maybe a behavioral pattern that people have noticed, and they will call you those names.
Yeah,
based
that's
on how
about
they've seen you
policy
perform in the past.
making. So that name, that nickname, right? In my view, is typically associated with areas where we feel that the administration has been slow in being responsive to issues, right? But he's using it in a rather specific context, right? After saying you will see whether I'll go slow or fast, the next thing he's talking about is the police and GPOs and the police command. Now, this is in a context where we already have mass resentment towards the police and the way they've been handling issues in the public eye lately.
Right.
So again, this is an area where something that was a light issue, the optics might not just look good because of the way it's been framed.
Yes, and when you read between the lines.
Yeah.
Thank you, Justin, for that. Well, next is the story from I'll take this one from New Telegraph now. This is relating to the budget. So yesterday when I saw the news breaking, I looked through the details and saw that they implemented the 90 billion naira increase to the budget of 2019. The budget was presented to the president in December 18, 2018, to which the president declined, especially relating to some items listed. But then the increase was pegged on the packages for lawmakers, security challenges, to cater to the security challenges and support for Zamfara State. But take us through the story, Cheta, seeing that this budget has been passed yesterday. Yesterday was the 27th of May 2019, and how this will be implemented.
How it will be implemented is a question that probably only divine individuals can answer. we've not yet seen the budget performance report for 2018, but based on the on statements that have come out, such as the statement that was credited to I think 2 weeks ago, that up to 78% of the revenue which we managed to achieve was spent on recurrent expenditure, which was way higher than what was budgeted for. And remember that we didn't even meet revenue targets. And then the fact that we've continued with the unrealistic assumptions, the fact that we've increased minimum wage, and the fact that we keep lying to ourselves, I don't have too much hope for the budget. The president, when he was signing the budget, lamented the 90 billion naira increase. It's we have to be very clear on that. And then he said that the increase in 90 billion is to cater for security challenges in the country, packages for lawmakers, and support for Zamfara State. If memory serves me correct, when these guys were increasing it, they talked about increasing for minimum wage. So we're already seeing different hymn sheets being sung from. I think that choir will not be the one that you want to listen to. But it's some little important context. The budget approved by lawmakers is based on an estimated oil production of 2.3 million barrels a day. We have not met 2 million barrels a day for donkey years now.
Based on the petrol
Based on our
crude
production,
price,
yeah.
yes, you pegged that.
About
Production cut limits by
production.
OPEC.
No, our production cut limits by OPEC is somewhere I think is 1.9. But that's besides the point.
Okay.
We are basing the budget assumption on our ability to produce 2.3 million barrels a day. We have been unable to meet 2.3 million barrels. We've been unable to meet even 2 million barrels a day for a very long time. The budget assumes an oil price of $60 a barrel. All things being so good at this point in time, it's above that. But whether we'll be able to sustain, whether the world will be able to sustain $60 per barrel a year for the entire year is another matter entirely. Crucially, the budget
for starts.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to
Which
stop.
some people are pushing.
I was even just going to say what year is it?
That's not going to. That's not going to start. Trust me on
2019.
that. There are other things that are going to take attention. Trust me on that.
Okay.
But will be disappointed. I know
so-
you're looking at me. Anyway, back to the story. Crucially for me, the budget assumes an exchange rate of 305 naira per dollar. Reality is very, very different. Reality is quite, and this disparity is a problem. Now, here's another thing. We keep talking about how this is the highest budget, or well, second highest we've ever had after the 2018 budget, which we didn't meet up. But again, the reality is quite different. Our highest budget ever in reality was 2013. And it's been almost more or less downhill since then, because what you do is you convert it to a currency that has retained its value over that period, not one that has fluctuated in value as wildly in value as our naira has. So my point is, when you keep having these little mathematical problems, and then you keep having a budget where we see it's the same template that we use year out. Remember that story about expecting somebody to doing something the same and expecting a different result? That's us.
Well,
And that was that's said to be madness. Actually.
Yeah, there are fundamental problems in the budgeting templates, right? Aside from the fact that we are budgeting for things that people are in our position have no business budgeting for. For instance, we need to seriously consider going to a unicameral legislature instead of bicameral legislature, i.e., we don't need a Senate and a House of Reps. We are catering for too many freeloaders who are just taking money and absolutely contributing nothing to the economy of the country. And then going back to the issue of the budget template. So you have ministry departments and agencies every year budgeting for furniture, budgeting for vehicles, budgeting for stuff at ridiculous prices,
And not forgetting the recent call by different states, national or state assemblies actually asking for life pensions and
all of that.
Why would they not ask us
I mean,
about
a few
that?
days ago, it was in the news. At the National Assembly, officers of the National Assembly are auctioning off furniture that belonged in their offices, the outgoing assembly, right? A lot of them were retained. A lot of them are returning senators. They are auctioning off things like double door refrigerators, which we know how much they sell for in the supermarket,
Yeah.
for about 25,000 naira.
And we would expect that
And
those
they will
properties belong
budget
the
to
government.
replace those things. They are government assets, but they've created
So
a
they
structure
have
where they are
recurrent
able to take them
capital
away.
expenditure.
Yes,
Wow.
they will go into.
Thank you for
Why do you
your
vex?
analysis, Cheta. And just
Because it
sometimes
is money.
It's money that I mean, we're supposed to be saving more money.
We talk about these
and
things in
we-
highlights, but when you sit down and look at what the problem is, you ask, are we crazy?
Yes.
No. Well,
Cheta is speaking for himself, but let's take some comments. Ike says, guys, a man says he'll be hard on the judiciary just to show his nuts Baba goes through, and we sit idly by. That's how it starts. And then
I started long
Ayi
ago.
Chuku said, hello guys, somehow I do not doubt Baba Jet's speed on his abilities to speed up, but I am sure his response to terrorism and herdsmen terror shall be slower.
pessimism there. Dami says nothing inspiring about the president's speech. It's all threats and force. How fast will he improve our education? How many of our out of school children will get off the streets fast? How fast will he lift majority of Nigerians out of poverty? Infrastructure, electricity, security. Baba goes slow must go fast on what really matters to us and stop the threats. Do your work. Thank you for your messages. We move to Premium Times for this next story, and this is for you, Justin. So the Code of Conduct Bureau announced yesterday, or rather, they announced that today that the deadline for public officers will be enforced, to will start really for those especially whose tenure ends May 29th tomorrow. We understand that tomorrow is the handover date officially, especially relating to those who took over power or inaugurated into office June 9th, 2015. They are giving them this deadline of today to submit their end of tenure assets declaration forms. Please take us through this story, especially highlighting those who are affected by this order.
Well, this is a public service announcement. So the deadline is on or before June 8th, right? And the category of public officers who are affected is the president, the vice presidents, the president and deputy presidents of the Senate, speaker and deputy speaker of the House of Representatives, all lawmakers at state and federal levels, and all other political appointees whose tenures will soon be ending. Now, the key thing in this release is it reminds everyone that a person elected to the office of the governor of the state shall not begin to perform the functions of that office until he has declared his assets. I'm assuming that provision, that specific provision, has parallels also for other public offices.
Right.
So essentially, please, elected officials, go declare your assets. Those of them in the judiciary, please, you're not elected, but please also remember to declare your assets so we don't get to a situation where somebody says they forgot and puts us in a crisis situation again.
So let me speak for the ordinary man. Would this be directly interpreted to mean that if you do not declare assets, we don't expect you to take office?
Constitutionally, you should not begin to perform the functions of the office.
But you know what I'm more interested
Even
in,
if you have
Justin?
been sworn in.
Yes, or even if you got a certificate of return.
Yes.
Justin, what I'm very interested in is the declaration after the end of your tenure. I don't think there's a lot of focus on that as much as before the tenure. And I'm saying that because ideally the reason why that's set out that way is to see just how
close
much
the loop.
to close the loop, and to if you've enriched yourself in the 4 years or 8 years you've been in office, then we want to see just how much you've made. I remember the vice president declaring a flat and a house. I would like to see if he has amassed a few more or less, or still maintain status quo.
I agree completely.
Lies the very critical question, because remember how we alluded to how they were selling, or you mentioned that they were selling properties off, and will that include what they acquired during this tenure?
No, what they are selling off is assets that belong to the National Assembly, i.e., that belong to the people.
As an instance.
Look at the example of the former First Lady. What has happened there
You keep
is
quiet.
It's just reminding me.
what has happened there. Okay, I forgot he was the account officer. What has happened there is that it's other people essentially that were holding the monies. So the whole declaring of assets afterwards, while good on paper, is moot. People can always get fronts to acquire the assets on their proxies. That's he will know he was the account
But
officer.
what else do we have?
I was not account officer to anything, just for
So-
the records.
Why?
What else do we have? EFCC.
EFCC has proven to be distinctly somewhere less than competent in doing all of these things. Let's be realistic.
But
So
they've been
the
winning
point
they've been winning on
against
strong outside.
small Yahoo boys. See, the point is, this thing is, we need a better way of, a better mechanism to track all of these things. What we have right now is not working. And then again, because too many people are simply dependent on these people for bread and butter, there are so many people who will actually cover. The system needs a complete
really
overhaul.
them.
But I don't know.
Thank you,
All right. Thank you very much, Cheta. A few comments before we move on to our next story. Ibrahim says, I saw the budget for a certain bedded minister's ministry flabbergasted. It's an understatement.
And Vic sent in this message on WhatsApp. Actually, Charles says, when I read about the National Assembly auctioning stuff at ridiculous prices this morning, I really went bonkers. These guys are going on a mass looting spree, he said. So thank you, Charles.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on, Cheta. I'll come to you for this one. Federal government has approved 47 billion naira for Nigeria Air, says the Minister of State for Aviation, Hadi Sidika. Before you go into the details of this story, Cheta, I should ask you, good news. Are you excited about this news? What's your take on this?
not all birds are meant to fly. Shall we move on?
Please now give us the details.
let's not just move on. Let's not just move on.
Yes, let's move on.
The plan to establish the airline was met with a lot of skepticism, including from me. Then remember that there was a July launch last year in the UK.
2018.
After which many people resigned themselves that it was a done deal, and then there were now all sorts of back and forths. Foreign airlines were said to be technical partners and all that. Then it was suspended. The fact is, this airline thing, this Nigeria Air, is a waste of everybody's time and money. It will not fly. But
why do you say so, though?
Huh?
Why did you? Okay, about to explain. Go ahead.
My own fear is that this thing will come in and cannibalize existing airlines, the private sector airlines, because they will come in. If they bring it in, if they force it down our throats as they keep threatening to do, they will bring it in, and then they will use lower pricing to pursue the other airlines to essentially run them out of business.
Well, isn't that good for business competition? Healthy
that's
competition?
Not competition. That's distinctly unhealthy competition.
Okay.
If because they have access to direct government subsidies, they are doing everything at below cost price. That is distinctly unhealthy
But
competition.
what would you say about the other airlines that are managed by government agencies?
Well, if I would chime in on this, my own concern here is even the lack of transparency, right? About what's going on. What Cheta is talking about is going to crystallize if we actually get an airline that is in operation. Now, this specific funding that has been announced, 47 billion naira, is to fund what's called is to cover what's called a viability fund gap. That's when you're launching a business that is not covered by equity, debt, or any other kind of capital, and then you give them a grant before the private equity that the so-called private partner is supposed to get, who we still don't know is the private sector partner.
The railways.
No,
who's the private sector partner?
Not just the railways.
Which one?
Precisely what I talked about the fact that they will fund this thing to the extent of others. As in, essentially, that's a subsidy.
Subsidy to
remember that we were told that this thing we're supposed to have the government was supposed to own 5%.
Yes.
That's what we were told.
Yes.
But as it is the government that is funding everything. So who
are the partners?
Who are the partners? Who are the people that? I mean, look at the scandal around the design of the logo, for example. Just that Nkorocha ribbon that they put there and said is a logo. How much was it again?
I think it was 200 million.
It was some millions of naira.
Let's move on.
Thank you very much, Cheta. Thank you. Justin, thanks as well for weighing in into the story. Just as a reminder, in September 2018, it was reported the suspension of the planned commencement of the operations of Nigeria Air. When it was announced that they were going to commence operations, there was a lot of excitement, anticipation, and
who said
a number
excitement?
of people, maybe not you, Cheta, but a number of people were optimistic about this because more than ever they moved a bit further on, and then in September we're told that it will be suspended without any concrete reasons. All right, Justin, I'll move on to you for the next story. Premium Times, 2019 elections, INEC withdraws 64 certificates of return. Now, they've so far withdrawn 64 certificates of return and reissued them to persons declared winners by courts of law following the 2019 general elections. They gave the example of Zamfara State, but can you please just take us through this story?
Well, I like the fact that INEC is playing hardball with the usual suspects, right? So this is democracy getting better. Maybe creeping, maybe crawling, but this is democracy getting better and institutions getting better one way or the other. So essentially, in a place like Zamfara,
Yes.
we've all heard the news. All of the APC candidates have lost their elective positions.
Yeah.
Basically,
And I was
because-
following a ruling.
basically following a
Supreme
court
Court,
ruling that has to do with the internal party democracy, the primary elections
Yes.
that were not properly conducted in line with the provisions of Section 87 and Section 31 of the INEC Act.
Okay.
So they've cancelled all those elections and they've given certificates of return to the PDP candidates, who automatically become the winners of all the elections that were conducted in the state. So that's a riot act being read to all the political parties, and they specifically have encouraged the parties in Bayelsa State and West Delta State, where gubernatorial elections are coming up in August. I think there's Bayelsa State, which is slated for August, and Kogi State.
Yes, so that's between August 2nd and August 29th.
Exactly.
Yes.
So they need to make sure that they follow the rules of the game and stop this shenanigans of people popping up out of the woodwork and declaring them candidates when they didn't buy forms, because that's a lot of that went down previously.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what the story is saying.
All right, thank you very much. Now, I know you've mentioned that INEC, the moves of INEC to ensure that they're doing their work. How effective would you say, judging by the how they conducted the last elections, post-elections, very notably the refusal to issue a certificate of return to the outgoing governor of Imo State based on intimidation of their staff? Generally, and hope for the future, how would you appraise the performance
of INEC?
Yes.
If you ask me, who I go ask? That one got me.
What? INEC in 2019.
The elections looking forward, because they're still conducting.
The 2019 elections were a step back from 2015.
I was going to say, I wish we could get Jega back.
End of story. It's not even debatable.
All right, thank you very much. The reason I'm asking this is because they talked about the fact that the elections should be conducted, that's the Kogi and Bayelsa elections, that they will have a positive impact, almost patting themselves on the back that they've done well with the 2019 election and moving forward. So just wanted to clarify from you. But we'll go on to our next story, Cheta, and this is a bit taking us, a bit on a history journey. Buhari says, 1966 coup, counter coup, I was all in it. And he made the statement during an interview with the NTA, a pre-recorded interview, and he talked about the fact that he was all in the first coup, January 15, 1966, and the counter coup. And so he qualifies, qualified, a direct quote from him, fully qualified to be referred to as a suffering Nigerian. Can you please take us through this?
He was a coup plotter. What does it mean by suffering Nigerian?
Well, what worries me is not even the rigmarole that he went on. What worries me is what he went, how he came on that, came to that, the question he responded to.
Yes.
Because the journalists, okay, a bit of hands on chest here. I didn't watch the interview.
Okay.
The reason I didn't watch the interview is I had a presentation to get ready.
Okay.
So I prepared, I recorded the interview, which I'll watch tomorrow. Tomorrow is a public holiday. But based on what I'm reading in the papers here, the journalist or the anchor asked him, who is Buhari? And then his response was, I think I went through hell throughout my career in the military.
Yeah.
I was a lieutenant in Lagos during the first coup, January 15, 1966. If you bother about Nigerian history, you read about coup and counter coup, civil war, coup, counter coup. I was all in it, including in detention for 3.25 years. So I'm fully qualified, to be called as a suffering Nigerian. Now, that is a rather long-winded answer, which doesn't answer the question. Who is Buhari?
Yeah.
As in, what?
It actually does. It gives you an insight into the workings of the mind.
It doesn't answer the question. I'm sorry.
He's told you who he is. That's the lens through which he sees himself.
In terms of
A military man,
okay,
first and foremost.
I get your point. Now, having said that, the more important thing, because what I pick from it is, if you bother about Nigerian history,
Yeah.
it's a very, very important point, especially given that today is National Day of Mourning as declared by various civil society organizations.
Yeah.
We have a culture of killings, counter killings, and this has been going on since before independence. We have incidents where people are killed.
Yes.
Let's go 1953, the Kano riots. In the early 1960s, Operation Wete, the 1966 the first coup, the reprisal coups, the pogroms that followed, a lot of undocumented killings during the war itself. Coming back, the Ugep massacre in 1975, Bakolari massacre in 1980. I can keep naming and naming. We do not name this. Now, as per Buhari's involvement in the 1966 counter coup, he happens to be stationed after the 1966, the first coup in 1966. He was transferred to Abeokuta, so he was in the Abeokuta garrison. And he was present when Sergeant Sabo Kole and Corporal Masamari Maje rounded up officers of Igbo extraction, starting with Lieutenant Colonel Gabriel Okonweze, who was the commanding officer of that garrison, and shot them. So, this was his involvement. He was an eyewitness to that.
Yeah.
During the war, he was stationed for most of the war in Calabar. This is our history. We should not be afraid to talk about it. We need to find closure, because the truth is that Nigeria has not recovered from 1966.
So what would closure look like to you?
Closure is everybody coming out, airing their grievances. There's a lot of pent-up grievances.
So people giving a fair hearing.
Think about
See,
the Truth Commission in South Africa.
this thing is 53 years ago. Not one of us in this studio was born then. So it is very, very a few weeks ago, it was heartbreaking for me when the son of the governor of Kaduna State goes on Twitter to start talking about things that happened in 66 and how a section of the country killed another section of the country and all of that. His father was not even around then. You understand? So these things are things that have been passed on from parents to children and are being passed on to the next generation, and we're bottling it up instead of airing. Everybody air your dirty linen, and then let us, so that we will know that, okay, we are drawing a line.
So we need to have closure.
Thank you
as very
a
much,
country.
Cheta. Now, if you're interested in reading that article, he also answered questions around the choice of ministers. He wasn't very open about that relationship with the National
That
Assembly.
long is coming back.
Cheta also spoke about security and kidnapping, police. His thoughts on the police. It's a full report on the Punch newspaper, or better still, if you recorded the interview like Cheta, you might want to watch it and get it firsthand. But thank you very much.
It's a report from this day.
From this day, thank you very much. This day newspaper, you said what?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Thank you very much indeed for being a part of the conversation, Justin at Justin Ijeh and Cheta at Chexter. Thanks a lot for the analysis to the news this morning, and thanks to everyone who sent in comments this morning, as well as and watched us live on YouTube. You can follow us collectively at Smooth 91 FM. We'll go on a break right now. When we come back at 8:15, we will be giving you some information and news in the grapevine. Good morning.
When